Hello there, people of the internet. This is probably going to be a rather fast video, but it's one that I think warrants discussion because I was asked this and I was like, hey, that's actually a really good idea for a video. Why are Glock style handguns such a common style of modern handgun? Whenever we look at handguns from, say, the early 1900s, you had a lot of different variety in terms of different actions and different things that you would come to expect. But basically, whenever it comes to nearly all of your modern pistols, they're essentially Glock clones. Either that or they are some kind of 1911, which is a little bit more of a dated design, but this is a topic for another video. So Glock clones are extraordinarily popular in the United States. Even if it's not an actual Glock, if you look at basically any of your modern polymer frame striker-fired handgun, it's basically going to work exactly how a Glock would. So Glock came around, I believe, in the 80s, and it was revolutionary for the time period because they were using a polymer frame, which made the gun significantly lighter weight, and they were higher capacity than what previous generations were used to. They essentially took the concept of polymer and plastic and made it into a very effective handgun platform. Not only that, but it is also extraordinarily reliable. So typically, we are looking at if we are looking at, say, competition guns or something like that, you will see a firearm, normally a 1911 design, that has some sort of single-action hammer-style mechanism on it. In this particular case, with the 1911, this has already been cleared, this has already been cleared. If I go pulling the trigger on this thing, you'll notice that the hammer doesn't move because it's single-action. The hammer has to actually be back for me to pull the trigger, that hammer to drop, and this thing to go bang. What that translates to is that because of the way this system works, I'm trying to explain this in a way to where like non-gun people can understand. Because of the way this system works, the triggers on these are extremely nice. And having a trigger that you don't have to pull back really hard doesn't shake the gun around, and that translates to good accuracy, which is one of the reasons why competition shooters tend to lean towards something like that. However, if we start looking at things that are striker fired, that don't have a hammer sticking out of it, these are better for concealability, mostly because you don't have this sharp hammer sticking out the back that'll stab you in your belly if you try carrying this thing. Not only that, but they tend to be a simpler and cheaper design and easier to produce and easier to figure out than something like a hammer-fired system. Like, in terms of a company's manufacturing standpoint, making a striker-fired system is simply easier. On top of that, the locking system inside these, it's actually a delayed blowback system, but for all intents and purposes, we're going to say the locking system. The locking system inside these are the same tilting barrel action that Browning designed like over 100 years ago at this point, 120-something years ago at this point. But it's that same sort of tilting barrel design, and it works extraordinarily well. On top of that, it's extraordinarily simple and easy to manufacture, and very cost-effective. It's just a really, 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 really good design that we can make for not a lot of money. So the cheap simplicity of the striker-fired system combined with the cheap simplicity of the tilting barrel and how easy it is to actually produce these things are one of the reasons why the Glock mechanism has become so ridiculously popular. Now, there are, say, designs like the 1911 that have that same tilting barrel design, but the 1911, the locking system is actually up inside the slide itself. It's got like actual locking lugs on the barrel. I can't disassemble this because it's against YouTube rules, otherwise I'd take it apart and I'd show you. But it's got two little locking lugs on the barrel itself that actually like lock up into the actual slide itself, versus something like a Glock clone, which the locking system is right here on the ejection port, so you don't have to worry about carving additional locking systems inside the slide, which again adds to simplicity. On top of that, these right here have polymer frames. Polymer frames, they're just kind of cast, like for the most part they're cast. There is some polymer milling technology that is around, but by a huge margin, your polymer frame handguns are just going to be cast. Making a cast polymer frame is significantly simpler than, say, making a milled receiver or a milled frame for, say, a 1911 model. There are cast metal frames for 1911s, but even casting metal is significantly more difficult than casting plastic. So these are just really easy to make. They're really cheap to make. They're really simple to make. It's a horrendously simple design, and on top of all that, it's an overwhelmingly effective design. Something like this right here, this is a Smith & Wesson SD40 VE. These particular handguns, back whenever Smith & Wesson was making them, they actually copied Glock so closely that Glock sued them for it, and Glock won the lawsuit for it, because these right here, for all intents and purposes, are almost a direct Glock copy. There's some parts that are interchangeable, but most of them are not, but for by and large, it's basically the same design. And most of your modern handguns, because all trademarks and copyrights for Glock and whatnot, for the most part, have already been expired, so most of your handguns basically do copy that Glock design. But we got ourselves, double stack in this particular case, 40 Smith & Wesson, relatively high capacity magazine for a handgun, if we're talking about the time period where Glock was designed. Inside of a handgun that is extraordinarily lightweight, extraordinarily easy to use. They're very, very simple guns to take down. Again, I can't do it, but right here's our little take down lever. All I do, pull that down, slide comes right off, barrel comes out, everything just disassembles so gosh darn easy. Even your modern handguns, like mechanically speaking, they're all based off of essentially this design, unless we're talking about something real special or real unique. There's always going to be outliers and whatnot, but by a huge margin, this right here is the base design, the base mechanical system, just because it's so effective, so easy to make, so cheap to make, so cost effective. A lot of these right here, if we're talking about not worrying about quality control, they can be had for not a lot of money. Like, it really is impressive, just this design of handgun, this style of handgun, how much this handgun can achieve, and how modern day handguns, although they are basically all copies of the same thing, they're all extraordinarily good. Unless we're talking about like your cheap, like dirt cheap bottom of the barrel, no quality control handguns, but that's a topic for another day. As a matter of fact, I'll write that idea down too. So that is why Glock clones are so gosh darn popular. I mean, it seems like every modern handgun is a Glock clone of some kind. Like I said, unless we're talking about a one-off something. So thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.